Roll call.
Okay, so I might.
Diana? Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe we should do roll call.
Okay.
Okay, how about that? Let's
Okay.
start with
All right, great. Here's our agenda, and we'll start with roll call. So Miranda Baldowski. Miranda,
Miranda, she's muted.
can you unmute?
I'm here. Hello.
Deanna Burton, here. William Carrasco,
yes.
Jeannie Gross,
Yes.
Laura Unity, here. Diana Kessler, here. Michael Mangini. Judy Nelson is excused. Jim Parks.
He said he could be here. He said he could be here.
Okay, well,
Maybe it's the road.
Aaron Sekakuku and Rose Cody.
Here.
Super.
Good.
Well. Do your thing you do so well.
Okay. We'll jump right in. Just a quick update again on our meeting schedule. And so today is April 3rd, and you actually we sent you a lot of documents to review. But it is basically the introduction and the appendices, the glossary, and all of the good background information that went into the plan. So no goals and policies. And then next month, no, not next Monday, but Monday the 14th then would be what we anticipate to be the final meeting of this group to review the initial final draft. And I say initial final draft because we will need to continue to work on, missing piece of information, any final edits, revising the maps to get it ready for 60. But that will be a package, and that will also be the time when you can see the edits and changes based on your comments to the community services and public safety chapter and the resilient economies and housing chapter. So kind of mashing that all into one. But that will be the topic for that Monday. It is a Monday. Thursday is Monday. Any questions about that? And for Rose and Miranda who are online, if you're in person next week, we want to also just take a moment and thank you all for your time and efforts. We have just a little token of appreciation for all of your hard work and consideration. It's I don't know, you guys have been an amazing group to work with, and we just so appreciate everything that you do for the county. Really, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about you guys, and wish we could do more, but this is at least a little bit of an appreciation. So yeah, come next week too, and those are it's not kindling, those are coasters.
Technically, it's biomass.
Biomass, that's right. It's another
It could be compressed into a pharmacy. And then stored as part of a mixed use project.
Again, I think it's awesome.
I met with your first. Yeah.
Pretty interesting, huh?
Very interesting.
Yeah, so anyway, thank you guys so much. And with that, we can jump right in. I have my, and so I will just say when we get to the implementation plan discussion, I know Julie has a strategy, we have the opportunity to do a little bit of ranking. So, yeah.
Right, that's exactly right. I think that's the main event, actually.
So, and on the agenda, so the first, I don't know if you want to just go down the list here.
So, do you have this on here then, if we just want to run?
Oh, I do, I'm sorry. Give me a second to switch over. And I'm gonna open in PDF form, I think that might. Here. To read. So this is and it comes up first table of contents, and you can see there's more that needs to be populated in some of this, but I wanted to give this, initial just outline to show how the plan is and how we propose laying the plan out. Look at 3 sections, so, and then we get into the, acknowledgements and then the goals. Yes.
Pardon me, I asked everybody a question real quick. Because this is purely a review tonight, outside of us maybe going out a little fun with the priority list over here, how would you guys like to interact with this as far as any comments that you may or, want to ask questions better have input on? How would you best feel comfortable doing that? If it's a wordsmithing exercise, then that's one thing. If it's something more substantive as far as, direction or something like that, I think we should be clear about those 2 things. But do you have a suggestion, or do you just want us to just kind of go through it and see what happens?
I don't have anything written down.
Okay, all right.
Well, I mean, all the little wordsmithing things, I always just give to Melissa.
Okay,
And, a couple of these documents, I have a question,
okay, all right.
but not a ton.
Well, ton is super also, but did you have that?
I didn't.
Okay, so can you work with that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's start with it then.
Okay, so, so this first chapter really is all about setting the stage for the plan. What are our statutory requirements? And I will say I've added a little bit more in here, after I sent this to you about some of the actual statutory requirements. Talking about, now some of this is from our current comprehensive plan. Obviously the formatting is not, this is just a very unformatted version. We'll have it designed and formatted in a much more appealing way. But these quotes, the Navajo, traditional Navajo chant, and then the San County Almanac excerpt are in our current comprehensive plan. They seem to still be quite relevant. So I wanted to put them in here. And then what's a little bit different this time is, we had a lot of the initial work about the values and visions. So we wanted to capture that information. And then to really start to summarize, what you all have been seeing all along with each of the chapters, kind of as a whole, the overall value and then the vision theme. So that's what this is. We've learned and you all have emphasized that Coconino County is still very rural. The rural lifestyle is very important. So that's what this section is. It's actually excerpted right off of our website, because on the county's website, there's a section called the Code of the West. So we just renamed it and updated this a bit to actually be it's more appropriate probably to talk about rural lifestyle. So this is really not new information, but it's updated and it's carried forward this plan. And then really how to use the plan, that's where we start to get into some of the more formal aspects of it being used for land use decisions, how the goals and policies are applied. And so the land use planning priorities are, this is really important to look at these, because these are what we use for projects that come through planning commission review and then sometimes board of supervisors. We wanted to make it really clear about this graphic that you all looked at, the relationship of the comprehensive plan and how it interacts with other plans and how it influences those plans. So, and the color is not great on the screen, but if you're looking online, the color is actually quite nice. You can see this. Did anyone have any questions on this graphic? We talked about it before, but okay, it's something that we hope will illustrate that the comprehensive plan is at the center and everything else radiates out from it as far as the influences. We do have some amendments to the plan. Remember, the regional plan is an amendment, the area plans are an amendment. A rural planning area is an amendment to the comprehensive. And you can see we have a list here of the area plans that are already adopted. This is important in how we amend the comprehensive plan, and there is a section highlighted in yellow because we had adopted a zoning code amendment a while ago that changed, the criteria for major amendment, but it's in the zoning code, so we want this to mirror that. Statute does require that we have a process for major and minor amendments. So it is a public hearing process, just to know when this plan is finally adopted and there are goals and policies. There's this process to go through to amend it. And then a bit about the plan format, and then, the public engagement package. The engagement principles were right out of the public discussion. So that seemed like it was something to recognize as far as what the board approved 2 years ago, as far as some of our focus on how to engage. And then that was it. There'll be some more edits to this because there was a bit more background information that was important to talk about as far as requirements. Did anyone still have any comments?
I have two questions. One is just out of my own curiosity. Have there been any major amendments proposed to the plan using living English for these 10 years? I mean, is it something that happens or it almost never happens?
Well, there was one, Donny Park. Donny Park. It was, no, she's asking if there was a major amendment, yeah, so.
There wasn't.
Well, there was, but.
Was there one proposed that
Yes,
didn't
it's,
go
yeah.
anywhere?
So, but then if you look at, so one of the criteria for major amendment, there are very few, but there was an interesting situation with when we updated the Donny Park Timberline Fernwood area plan. And if you look at one of the criteria, the first bullet, changes to the text conflict or with or alter one or more of the goals and policies in the plan. So during that update process, there was a proposed policy that did conflict with one of these. So that became a major amendment. But in the end, it wasn't done. So, but nothing has been proposed by.
That's one of the reasons it wasn't. That's one of the reasons why Donny Park Timberline Fernwood area plan did stay consistent
Right.
with the comp plan because that was a goal, keep the area lines consistent with comp plan.
Okay.
But other than that, there hasn't been anything. Now, in a place like, cities around Arizona, they have a lot of amendments, probably way more than we would have in our rural county because the volume of development.
And one of the reasons we don't have a lot of amendments to our comprehensive plan is because our comprehensive plan does not include a land use guide. And many plans do include land use guides. And then when a property owner wants to do development that is not consistent with that land use guide, they have to get an amendment to change that land use guide. We've really found, especially when you get away from the Flagstaff region, where we have the Flagstaff regional plan that has a land use guide, we really haven't had the need for a land use guide. So much of our land is general zone, all the ranches are all general zone. And we have some flexibility with the general zone where we haven't, until now, I mean, maybe someday we will. We considered it this time, but it didn't happen. So without a land use guide, there hasn't been a lot of need for amendments. Take the Flagstaff regional plan, and we have had, obviously within the city, there have been proposed amendments. There have been a couple of proposed amendments within the county, but none of them ever went through. There would have been amendments to the Flagstaff regional plan land use guide, but that's the
Okay.
Flagstaff regional plan.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, there was one other example when we did the Belmont area plan.
Mhm.
There was an update to the land use map there,
Okay.
to the regional plan land use map.
Okay.
And that is one area plan in the county that does have a future land use map, just a little bit of an amount.
Okay. And then the only other question, again, just a question, but the very end of this section, the last engagement principle, that you have. You've listed background reports and specifically you talk about the community assessment reports. And this raised the question to me, are those going to remain available through the history, the tenure of this plan? And do you want to put a sentence like that, will retain access to these reports over the next 10 years?
Thank you, Laura, for that question, and that's a great suggestion, and I want to, that is one of the more administrative pieces we need to finish. And so when we have this appendix, and this is the communities of Coconino County, what we'll be doing is we will be linking those in this, and so they will live on the county's website until the next time around.
Okay.
And so we have to insert the hyperlink here, but yes, they will, and that's a good point to note that.
So Melissa, what is the rural growth boundary? Is that something that's on the website? Rural growth boundary?
Hi, Jim. So the rural growth map, it's not on a map right now.
Okay.
Other than, not on the comprehensive plan map. So interestingly, in the history of the Flagstaff regional plan, the regional plan initially identified the rural growth boundaries for the areas in the county within the region, and I never put a map out here.
Yeah.
But so now, since we're working on regional plan, comprehensive plan simultaneously, we're gonna just refer to that within the comprehensive plan. And we're having a map created to show this, because so basically they're just around, in Belmont, Dunny Park, Timberline, Fernwood, Fort Valley, 184, Pachino Village, Mountain Air. You'll see the map, and this is the way the boundaries have been for at least since the last regional plan. They're just around, it surrounds the existing,
Surrounds the existing private land.
private land.
As surrounding, so saying there's a rural growth boundary is really a way of saying, we want to keep the growth on private land and not expanding onto national forest land, which we all know that national forest exchanges are an incredibly long, arduous process regardless, so, but that's really what the rural growth boundary is saying. Develop on where private land exists and don't expand. Let's keep our public lands, the national forest, let's keep that national forest.
Another great question, and I do have a map, but I just haven't. Else on the background, we switch. Hi, Jim.
Hey.
Okay, so the next document was the implementation plan, and so this was 9 pages of fun review. But what this came directly out of all of the chapters you've looked at. And if you remember, after many of the goals and policies, we had an implementation strategy idea. So this is a consolidation of all of those. And there are 52. What we've done here is given suggestions to you about a ranking. Now, a lot of these are ongoing projects, so they're not ranked high, medium, or low. So it simply says ongoing, and that is like the first section here. We also have it on sheets over there on the wall.
So the far left is the ongoing, right?
The ongoing. So there are 17 ongoing projects. I think I added one. Okay, I did add one, and it would be no, there are 17. But I did add one note here that we continuously update the zoning code. That's kind of a given. But it wasn't stated anywhere, so that was just something that seemed obvious to add. But the rest of these, nothing has changed. The next set are the high priority projects or programs based on the new goals and policies that. And again, these are suggestions. So what we'd like to do, and then it goes high, medium, and low. So high priority, we were suggesting that they be high priority because we would want to see them implemented within 1 to 2 years of this plan being adopted.
You're getting ready to say exactly what you need to say, but Laura could ask a question I know she has right up front, that might help set the stage
Okay.
for us with regard to the rest of this.
Well, so this was just to say that my reaction to this was that priority to me means something like highest impact or most valuable, or if you could only do one thing, this is the thing you would do. And that's different from timeline. Because maybe the most important thing you could possibly do is something you can't do until you do 3 other things first. Or something you're not gonna be able to do until the county wins a $20 million federal grant, which is not gonna happen in the next 6 months. That kind of thing. So I thought, first of all, some sort of a preface to this that said why you are linking priority and timeline. Maybe asking whether you have to link priority and timeline. And just explaining what you mean by priority. I mean, the other thing is that, some of the low priority projects, they might be cheap, easy, quick to do. Why not just get them out? Why hang around for 8.5 years before you do those? So those were the questions that were in my mind by seeing the linking of priority.
Thank you for that, because that's part of what we want to do. So again, these were suggestions, and from looking at it as staff point of view, priority being not just timeline, but capacity and what staff could potentially do in that. So it was both really looking at, what would seem to be important for the plan and also the timeframe that they, because they were important, they could be implemented right away, but we also had not.
I love that.
So these are 1 to 5, the red kind of correlates to the high priority. So I have color dots for each, the red, blue, and yellow. And if you wanted to take a few minutes and you each get a 1 to 5 set, then you can look at the high priority. And I mean, in the high priority, there are more than 5, but choose your 5, top 5 high priority. And then.
Okay, I think this is super, and yet at the same time, I'd like to kind of go back to this question again though, because we go prioritizing, but then if we go back to the question, we're only prioritizing them based on something that we haven't really decided on
Okay.
how to prioritize what, or what the language is that guides the comprehensive plan as far as what the priorities are. Maybe they evolve or they adjust over time because of things that come up that allow for something down below to happen, shifting them and stuff. So I almost feel like it's a dynamic set of priorities and somebody maybe describing that sense of dynamic, sense to them allows the county to occasionally or whatever, look back at those and readjust themselves what the priorities are given the circumstances or the timelines or the money available or some of these things. Laura, did you have a way to maybe articulate what you were asking your question? Is it like more of a statement that we could use as a guide for this?
I don't have it. I was ready for this suggestion. But I just wanted us to see if this could clarify what priority means in this document. And I bow to their professional opinion as to what's feasible for following high priority in your planning world. But just explain what that is.
We had this conversation actually about value versus time frame. And one of the things that came up is like, if it is really highly valued, when we put it on? And I think maybe that's where we decided to go ahead with the inflation of it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that
Are
up.
there any of these high priorities that there is funding for, or are they all dependent on grant writing and for?
Very common, I mean, kind of the typical cycle of abating comprehensive plan, which resides in planning and zoning, as it guides, zoning, which regulates land development, is anytime you do a comprehensive plan update, usually follow up with doing some tweaks and updates to your zoning ordinance. We do that in-house as staff. So there's several things that we do, with staff, with, yeah, starting without seeking funding. Actually, so there's a few in there, some of the high ones, particularly doing a housing needs assessment, that would take some funding. But that wouldn't necessarily require a grant. That would be making some decisions in budgeting with the board of supervisors. Of, hey, if we say this is a high priority, housing is a major issue, housing affordability has only gotten worse. This is something we need to better understand. Better need to understand the problem before we start striving solutions. So this is something that is
Into the budget then?
exactly. I don't want to throw out a dollar amount, but that's something that could be a low enough dollar amount to do a housing study. City of Flagstaff has done one. There have been other local governments similar to ours who have done them. That's something that wouldn't necessarily need grant funding, but could be worked into the board's budget. And this is the document that we would be going to the board with in budget season to say, hey, we said this was a priority, or let's put our money where our mouth is. Likewise, we would do an annual comprehensive plan report to board supervisors. We're relooking these, and we may be reordering. Things may come up. Flood control district, forest health, and thinning for prevention for wildfires. You name it. The housing issue, other issues. Things may change on an annual basis for the board when it comes to funding.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead. Please.
How available would funding be for something like this? I mean, you've got, like you said, forest health, you've got flooding, you've got fire, you've got all these things. What do you think is your availability, possible availability for funding?
Well, they're all different projects. And so just looking at, for instance, on the screen, the line 19. So Public Works, they already applied for grant. It wasn't awarded, but they're applying again for a new grant for that. So it really depends on the project. Flood control has their own source of funding. So a lot of these are, kind of cloud specific, if you will, as far as where the funding comes from. But many of these are actually new ideas for the comprehensive plan, but they've all been looked at by the different departments who would be responsible. And, for instance, number 19, seek funding to develop and implement a countywide multi-modal connectivity network. We talked a lot about that when we were looking at the transportation section. And that came up, in our discussion here as being something that resonated and was important. So funding, a lot of these, there is possible funding, but a lot of these do require grant funding when it's needed. Like, potentially adopting a wildland urban interface code. We don't have funding for that. We have to seek funding. But it could be priority. Just like doing the next one, line 23, support forest fuels reduction efforts. So we don't have funding for all this right now, but it's possible to get it.
And the other staffs who helped us put this together, the flood control district folks, they know where their regular sources of money are that they see. Health and Human Services, they know where their funding is. Public Works, the transportation world, when you talk about the funding in the transportation world, you're talking so many billions of dollars is in transportation funding. The kinds of things we work with down here like these level of plans. Something that Melissa and I would be able to get our head wrapped around, like a housing needs assessment.
Yeah.
We're probably talking in the tens of thousands of dollars. And those are the things that county could make decisions to work into the budget. The big things at the public works level, that's seeking transportation funding from the state, from the feds. It's very, based on, and this is where it's great to get all of the other departments working with us on consolidating into this comprehensive plan. They know where their funding sources are. They know what the realities are.
And I think like Jess said, we've been, not this year, but we've been going to the board every year with kind of a report on the comprehensive plan implementation. And this is part of it. So these can all change, you guys can change these priorities today. Something that's low to be high and vice versa. So,
I'll give you one example, just because I like to put a feather in our cap and give you a perfect example. The 10-year-old comp plan had, in this list, implementation action items, had one, create a full-time, long-range planner position. Yeah. We did it. She's sitting right here, okay? It had another one, create a renewable energy ordinance out of that appendix. Guess what? We did it. You know what money paid for it? Our salaries. We did it in-house with community members. So those are the examples of things that we can do, that fall within our purview, our control, and that we have, the resources to do. A sustainability plan that would probably take. So those are examples.
I understand, but I remember when I was on the board of supervisors, budget time was, it was a severe time for things like this, because they were not, to them, my priority. We had trouble adding the sheriff there. So. Okay.
So just a quick question too, for clarification, when you're looking at these and prioritizing, I kind of go along with what Laura was asking. So on these, high priority, are there any of them that would require, so I know like on the housing, that it says you would be collaborating with internal and external, and you probably hire a consulting firm. I understand that, but any of these others, would they require new staffing here at the county?
I don't,
Yeah.
we didn't put anything like that.
This time, there's none that identify staff.
There's one that says continue to support our wildlife plan, or we have a wildlife.
Okay,
It's an ongoing.
okay.
Can you scroll down just so I can see the header for just a moment? Just the header, okay. So to go back to where Laura kind of spawned a little bit of this discussion, on the heels of what you started the business about here. If I'll give it just a little bit. What we're thinking here is that where that yellow box is up there, this is priority and timeline. So it's that yellow box there. What if that yellow box just as simply, just for simplicity, just said something like priority, values, needs, timeline? In other words, where it gives a sense of what actually could happen with regard to the priorities over time. I think that's probably a pretty fair way to look at what happens to these priorities over a 10-year period of time, and would help everybody understand it's not just timeline. It includes the values, it includes the needs, in these broader assessments. But probably tighten it up pretty fast. So anyhow, it says.
We have that.
We can change that or not.
Would that be useful?
I think it would. Do you think it would actually streamline this list? Or just get rid of
I think it would clarify that it's both timeline and values.
Yeah.
Needs.
Yeah, we can put some tests in there too.
Or did I get that right?
Yeah, I think that's
Sort of.
for us, it's your projector is over the heating.
I can't think about it. It always makes noise. They know.
Oh, it's actually giving you an error,
Oh,
which means it's gonna shut itself off.
okay. Well, I hope not.
Just so you know.
Okay. Sorry, those online, if we reach you, it's because of power, right?
Yeah, it's gonna shut itself off.
We may lose the visual. So, do you want to take time to do this?
I should have thought of this before. I'm just thinking that sustainability attendance wasn't actually discussed by the group, and this is one of the things in this strategy. So kind of want to make sure people understand what's being proposed before they.
Okay, we can do that.
Well,
That's a good point.
reasonable or,
Isn't that?
Yes.
it is, so
Yeah,
if
they
you
said
feel
it.
like you,
They
Yeah.
said it
okay.
to us, so it's
So
one
why
of the
don't
things.
you, I'll bring it up, Nina, if you want to introduce it and then.
I mean, if you've all read it and you understand,
Yeah.
I'm just here to
Yes.
speak large.
I figured we
Answer
talk
any
about it
question.
in order.
Uh-huh. Right, I just wanted to make sure, because it is one of the things that was, we've got as a high priority there, that everybody understands, this basically came out of the chapter when we were doing our goals and policies and implementation strategy. We had a whole lot of ideas for what the county could be doing, but we realized there hadn't been a community outreach necessary or, sort of build consensus around doing these things. And so we thought that actually a separate sustainability plan was needed. Because the outreach we did was more for the general comprehensive plan. And so that's where this came in. We wanted to capture all the different implementation strategies we had, sort of gathered in terms of ideas for moving sustainability forward in the county. But because we didn't have the input, we needed to sort of say, these are what's important. We decided that what would make more sense is to actually do a separate plan where we do outreach to the community, where we do work, gather information from leadership, and to also look at all the other things that are already happening, in the county organization related to sustainability, and then look at what the gaps were.
So
And that's sort of,
yeah, so it's clear that this is not approving a plan, this is a potential framework for a plan that will be developed later, so, yeah, just,
but it's proposing that we do a plan.
Yes.
And that's what we're going to be implementing.
thanks, Nina.
Just wanted to make sure that everybody understood what was going on before. Ask any questions about. Plan. Framework.
If you want to go back to, so that's helpful, we will, add text into the introduction to the implementation plan that is actually valued to these as well as the timeline, so the identifier is based on the values of the plan, and then that's the we'll talk about this as a dynamic process. The yearly updates to the board may reorganize this as well as based on funding and staffing capabilities. So just an initial set of rankings.
So was that pretty much the review on that section then, what we just heard? Will we have more?
Well, there might be more comments. I mean, I think there might be more comments on the sustainability framework later, but if you wanted to stick with the implementation plan, we can go back to that now. And I mean, it's up to you guys. So if you think that as we presented it with these edits is okay, you don't need to do anything. Or if you want to rank, you can do these.
I like our edits. Does anybody else want to go reprioritize the priorities?
Well, were you suggesting taking our top 5 within each of these sections?
I was, and not, that doesn't mean anything falls out, but it just does give an idea of the top five.
Okay, well, then let it rip. Let's do it.
Okay, everybody gets to your top five. And this is just for the high priorities.
The first one here?
Yes. No, this one, second one,
Second, so this one?
yes.
Priorities.
That's the other one is just.
Oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
So we'll set a timer.
So we're just having told us when you got it.
Yeah, this one.
So just put your dot next to it.
Albert,
You know,
you're the only one.
Put your dot right here, next to your top five, 1, 2, 5. Or if you have notes, you can write notes. You think a high priority item is low priority, then
Let's go to top 5.
have fun.
So we're just two of them.
Take the other one up here and stop flashing at you.
Well, I can,
I don't care. They probably need to focus on that.
They did that.
They've been,
I don't know.
yeah, because IT whole views and you're constantly, they use it also, so they care.
Yeah, they like to.
Yeah.
I was suggesting it, see, I don't know. I say, yeah.
No, no, no.
So, yeah, I'm going to make a whole.
Yeah, it's my favorite. Shut up. That's actually one of the problems. It's peer pressure.
Yeah, but it's based on, like I said, it's like.
I like what that
Makes the changes.
Yeah, they don't do it. So.
Yes, it does. Right, you said that I. So right here, so change, sit on.
Yeah.
Values. It's true. But. And just like it's really based on the values.
Yeah.
What rows. I think that's what they're.
Yeah.
We'll reorganize. Yeah. Like 1-5.
Okay, yeah, I can see how they. A timeline,
Oh, I see.
short term, medium term, long term timeline separate. Yeah, you can still see it long term, it's still saying it's high on our values, needs, their. Yeah, because I feel. We had that same.
I'm gonna set a timer.
It's that.
I'm gonna set 2 minutes.
So let's get it, I come back and put this.
Yeah.
Reduction of our lines.
Okay.
Yes, John, okay.
You guys don't split lines.
Except she's just. Dirty. That's. I give her that. I can give her fun, that's your. And if you have something for me.
And here's the next one.
This, what's the change?
That's for the next meeting. And Miranda and Rose, I'm sorry that you're online. I don't have an option for you doing this online, but if you are looking at your lists and you want to send me notes, we'll add that to the rankings.
Okay, that sounds fine with me. Sounds good.
Right, you can just do 1 through 5 on if you have this printed out for yourself, or I can get it to you. A printed copy and just grade 1 through 5 from high, medium, and low within each section. Does that make sense?
Yes.
I know.
So I
What part of this?
They're all right.
It does.
You guys can make rows too. If you see, and you can. Yeah, you have right on there, it's right on.
Hey, Melissa, it's Miranda. I'm having trouble finding that list on the forms you sent us.
Are you in the email?
I am.
So it's called implementation plan.
Okay, got it. Got it.
It's
Okay.
the table, it's 9 pages.
Perfect. Found it. Thank you.
That's really good.
That's pretty much.
Too many people don't understand what they can do.
I'm sorry, the yellow ones are going to me. That's all I have. It's really all I have.
That's okay. We'll make it work. Yeah, these,
I need to know that.
my trainer. Ambulance and fire.
Right.
To put it.
Oh, okay. That makes sense for them because they were bringing it.
I know, I'm sorry.
It's okay. But, they also come out. And they have an opportunity. Our energy.
You have your other.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do some time, but I'll just, on building. That's an action plan.
Oh, there's two.
So that's action plan. Yeah, how many?
Look at their budget every year.
So that's in total.
Say, okay, if you have
But they're wearing.
$2 million for.
So
I didn't think we had $3 million, but people will go, oh, this is so hard. So, yeah, that's why you complain all the time. But the president, the deans, they're making these decisions. And you're complaining all the time. This is how hard it is.
Yeah, so there's, I'm not getting out there, like, that's incredible, she's people are even behind us. Yeah. It's not a in fact, it's something to do with, there's a given to one, but overflow shows that and then energy is still here. We get to also have it. There is the one portion that would can split off and go. He's talking about things, yeah, so it's all kinds of stuff, so I'm not sure. I don't know how to do it, I just know that it's not as much. Definitely. Yeah. So. So we have like programs. I think actually in all cities. No, I mean, I'm sure it's different. And certain things. And it's like, what is like.
Yeah, it's already on channel.
Here's the. Yeah. The places. It would definitely help with tools.
You did something for my.
I'm sorry. Do you need more? I must already.
Yeah, we can have you instead of what is that?
This can come up.
Schedule, like, you know, you're free.
I didn't put my stickies in there, just to order.
What do you think?
Well, one was not.
Hey, direction people.
She forgot.
Oh, yeah, sure.
So you're really not ready. Let me know.
Oh,
See?
well, the idea was to be.
I'll be taking more space. That's why I share that. Yes.
So, I put one here, there, she was here.
Yeah, yeah. Well, hopefully, it's always fun to see something happen.
No, but if you know,
Yeah.
well,
So go, Mike.
This one, say.
No, that's exactly. I think I did one of you.
There's a few that you like, the two dots.
yeah, well, it looks like it's gonna be in the top 5 anyway,
Yeah.
so.
Okay, let's complain about.
I think that this, to me, that's more of a city.
I mean, it helps.
That's to be countywide.
Yeah.
That'd be complex. Because there's so many different, like, there's all the environments. Just, you know, like, on that countywide, would be parent.
Yeah. When was it ready? It's like, look,
It's your priority.
study.
Well, unless somebody is saying it's not even high, I mean, they'll be the top
They'll be the
5
top,
on this
right.
list, right?
They help you with
But haven't done anyone say take something off.
No, I don't think anyone would say take something off.
Really?
That's what's there, what I mean. Yes, I just- I forgot to put something in.
Oh, my God, that's cool, like, oh, you like, so they can take their vacation. They will even out. You know, like, water, we have.
Yeah.
And which makes housing. Well, housing, because if you can't afford to live in the city limits, but you can't sit in town, you really afford cars and
They
transportation.
did it, Josh.
Oh, that's what it's totally about.
They go. Sorry.
And I think we do
It's
this.
kind of like, it's housing. And there are also many
Well, that would be, you know, technically it's there it is.
It's like the shade.
I like this. The pencil teaching.
Yeah.
I don't. Well,
Yeah, just we found.
I moved, I got it, it's 30 years, you know, it's like being on the easier to balance.
Yeah.
You.
Does this get, yeah.
Think you're right, that's right, you know, well, it's no evidence.
Especially up there in the valley.
You got a little bit of zero and some zero.
And fire. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, it helps with fires.
Everything.
Need to,
But it's frustrating.
you know,
Yeah.
We keep getting some more.
I think. That at the same time.
Yeah.
And now the spring.
Yep, we're done about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But. It's doing pretty
Yeah,
well.
we don't interpret the data.
In fact, I was talking to a grandparent friend of mine who lives out, he has around this book.
Mhm.
And he got about seeing those numbers. He said the grass is around there.
Oh, really?
It is.
I thought I was gonna be putting it away for a while, but I'm glad I'm not.
Are you completely retired this year?
I finished my 30 years in total in the reserves. I
That's like.
There we go for years.
It says a full version.
Yeah, but they keep you in the retired reserve. So like, that's an interesting, congratulations, you're in the reserve. As in you no longer do any reserve duties. But if we have a really major, they start running the numbers, they're like, wait, how old is this guy? This one's a thing. Yeah. And, yeah.
We used to call it.
Yeah. You know, just make, when you're 50, to be able to pass the physical fitness test and be able to meet all of the medical requirements to be able to deploy, that number is smaller and smaller. Well, I was fortunate, I was very healthy when I found out that.
Let's go.
Yeah, let's reconvene, we're one nodding.
Super.
So just, once again, Miranda and Rose, please, and then I'll get it to Judy as well. You know, you can send your, marked up copy and we'll add it to your ranking. So that was implementation plan, Diana's. She was.
No, that's fine. I got one more.
Okay. The next, unless there are more questions, comments, thoughts on this, we'll go through the rankings and put it together and then have this order that way for the draft.
So something else I noticed, the last column in these tables, type project or program, and I didn't see a single program. So I have that column,
Oh, thank you for.
or explain what it is or something, but anyway, that didn't make much sense.
I think that, you know what it was initially, there are programs in the ongoing list, but I didn't have ongoing in the drop. So, yeah, anyway, so I think it's just a matter of how I set it. But yeah, so a lot of these are programs in the ongoing, they're programs.
Oh,
So, okay. I'll fix that.
45 doesn't have any designation.
Pardon me?
Number 45 doesn't have any designation.
that's right.
It's a mystery.
It's an episode.
Okay, well, thank you for that. That was fun. I mean, I appreciate your time and I'm looking at it. So the next item then would be, again, to talk about the sustainability and resilience fix. And I have the page open that actually, has some of the policies that are in the plan and then what could be done to help implement those. So potential future strategies or on things that are already being done or things that future. Again, this is a framework. It doesn't mean that a sustainability plan will look anything like this, but these were good ideas that we wanted to capture. And just put out there as something that could be potentially adopted.
Is there discussion in this area that anybody has? Okay, I do, that anyway, but I'm hopeful that it'll only take me a second. So with regard to sustainability, one of the things that I've noticed, and just speaking on behalf of my personal experience with that ranch, so I can't speak for a lot of other areas. Sustainability is term, and as even maybe as a paradigm, is starting to slide back, and regeneration and regenerative type things are starting to replace that. And they are a little bit different, and anyway, but it is coming with the charge, full charge. So I just wanted to mention, I'm sure you're well aware, but anyway, so that if you're setting up a pretty strong framework of sustainability, but you can clearly see where we are starting to move to a new paradigm of more regenerative type framework, that you might have the door open for yourself to participate in addition. That's, it's not there anywhere, so might be a little bit for you.
So that might be something to note in this, that regenerative agriculture is something that a sustainability plan can actually reference. And
But it's not just regenerative agriculture, it's regenerative is going to be full on through everything. Yeah, it's gonna, and I'm almost certain of it myself, you know, for me to have confidence in us moving forward that way.
okay, thanks.
Good. It's exciting to see this.
And just really, quick note back in the implementation plan. So when we get to 60-day public review and open houses, you know, we'll have this open again for after the next.
Do we get to look at this after you public comment? After you integrated public comment or not?
Yeah, so we don't have a meeting scheduled, but after the public comments, we'll see what we get comment wise. And then if you feel that you want to reconvene and look at some of the major issues, you know, or make
Well, I kind of
comments.
like to know what people, now that they've seen this, the people that come to it, what are they thinking about? Which they are not have been represented to now.
Well, we'll definitely, you know, make sure that that all of you sees, and then the board and the commission and everybody sees, and the public too, the results of public
But can
comments.
we see it before it goes out to everything? I mean, shouldn't we weigh in on it or not?
Oh, you mean after the 60 day?
Right, after the 60 days. Maybe not, I don't know.
So they'll definitely, well, I'm anticipating we'll need to edit. And so that's where we'll probably need your input on how to respond to some of those. Yeah. But we don't have a meeting set up. That's why I said this is almost the last meeting. And next month, or the Monday, the 14th is almost the last meeting. So it's the last meeting for now. So then if there's nothing else on the sustainability appendix, the next item on your list would be the existing conditions analysis. And again, another long appendix. And the intent of this was to put background information that was otherwise making the chapter way too long. Some of the chapters are still quite long, but this has some key information in it. Particularly about the water resources chapter and how we came up with the projection, the future demand projection analysis. So again, this is really just information. There are no policies here. One thing I will say, we did in the water resources section of this. There's an implementation item up there. I don't know how it got ranked, to develop a county's water resource plan. I think it was like on the medium priority list. And there's some ideas in here about kind of an outline for that. So that is one thing that's also in there. Do you have any questions or comments on this information? Again, so there is just kind of an outline for a possible water resources plan. Not that it's, you know, the appendice, this is 25 pages. It'll just be a separate document. So it doesn't. Has some tables in it, the natural environment chapter, a list of threatened and endangered species, and for our diverse cultures, community character, this is a list of Arizona scenic roads, details. So just this kind of information that adds, it's good detail, but too much. And then again, Laura, to kind of circle back to the question about where do the community assessment reports and all the surveys go? They'll be appendix. So they'll also be stored on the website with links from this, hyperlinks, so somebody can go right into it. Because that was a little bit of a, thought process. How do we make sure that that's not lost in the future? And luckily, we do have storage on the website that they.
We're still on the, existing conditions, right?
Yes, and I just went to the very last page of that.
Okay. So in looking at the, I'm just curious, in looking at the county population projections, is part of that based on what land is available? Do you look at that? Like if, if there's a certain, like say parks has limited property for sale, then obviously the growth is not gonna be the same as maybe say Joni Park or something like that. Is that how to?
Well, I just disclaimer, these are directly from Arizona Department of Economic Security. They issue the official population projections for the county, and they use a certain model. It includes in-migration, out-migration, birth and death rates. It's based on census point in time. They do look at building permit data. They don't look at available land, in terms of developed or undeveloped. But they do look at those other factors, and their statisticians put it into the formula, and that's what we're using. I don't want to do that.
I saw it on Valley, we have projections for Valley. I'm just going out there for a while, a little clicker to count. They do that today, they projected in the future one.
Well, okay, yeah, it's, and again, they do start with a census count, and it may have been undercounted. In Valley. So that's one of the challenges with census counting in remote areas like that.
Sure.
Right. So, but these are the official projections, and it is showing growth over the years for that area. And so the next census in 2030, depending on how that works, they redo these. They continue to redo these.
Oh, let's see, there's supposed to be AI generator to find out.
I don't know.
No, 2030, I can see them doing that.
No, I don't. The census, they still go out and do door-to-door counts, and they ask people, how many people are living in your household at this point in time? And that's why it's important to get the word out, because these numbers go into revenues for the county. A lot of the state share revenue is based on our population projections. So if a census worker comes to the house and the person doesn't want to talk to them and they don't get the correct number, I think it works out to be, it's like $2,500 per person in revenue sharing. When you put all the pots together. But it's not insignificant. It's a lot of money, and it's definitely a challenge in rural areas to get people to be willing to talk to the census worker or fill out the form.
I thought it was very interesting that several of the incorporated places, they project not to grow long term. So,
Yeah. Fredonia for one.
That's because my thought on that endangered list you had earlier, our kids were supposed to be on there.
a lot of work to get them those applications.
What page is good?
I'm curious from Miranda what she thinks about Valley. Because Valley, to me, and you guys are planners, but you come out with some legislation that provides for economic incentives. And how many for July that's coming up, right, for the underserved areas. Valley to me is not to be a fan, but I'll just say, what's going on? It's just, you go back 5 years ago, you go back 20 years ago, it's like, they just wanted to throw nuts out, they were banned. Now, it's like, it just, I'm just shocked every time I know it.
Well, so, and Miranda, I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah. I actually, so when I first started the nonprofit, we were trying to get this data because we're trying to apply for different, grants and opportunities, and we kept getting hit with the census. And so I did some research and talked to someone who actually did the census in the Valley area during COVID. And she said it was a mess. The whole situation was a mess. So she directed me to some information where the county can help participate in essentially a recount, but not a recount. And we can do essentially another census recount, but it's not a recount, but it allows us to go back out there and redo the count. And we have until 2027 to do that. I have the information on that, but yeah, I think these numbers don't reflect, the accuracy.
There is a process with the Census Bureau to ask for the recount, but I do believe that the community needs to pay for it.
Right. Well, and I wonder, what that takes, if it's encouraged by the Board of Supervisors or just the process, and figuring out, maybe this is an investment that can be put back into the Valley community. Just some thoughts. I think it would be a cool or a goal potentially to do a recount. I think it'd be helpful for Valley, especially with Valley, with the fire district push and all those different things that are happening in Valley. I think it's really important that we get a more accurate population count.
I mean, that would be up to the supervisors. I know when we've done area plan updates, there are ways to do different style population projections. We did the Belmont and Bunny Park where we look at some housing units and undeveloped parcels and kind of project out that way based on certain per household. When we did the Belmont area plan, we came out fairly close to this. I don't remember for Donny's Park, the line, well, there's two different lines there. Yeah, I think for Donny Park, Timberline, when you add it together, it came out to be fairly close. So, yeah, there are places like Valley that I would say are probably undercounted, but other communities probably not as much. It's variable. But that would be something for the supervisors to decide whether or not to request.
That, you've got swimming parks, then you've got Matthew Ranchers, and then you've got Timberline Glen, you lump all three of those together.
Right, and that's what we did for the area. The Census Bureau, they have these communities, they count this way, and they have their geographic delineation for different communities. And it is interesting if you guys really want to get to some of the nerdy data. I mean, you can go in and so they have certain communities that are called census designated places. So all of these that are in this list down here, you can go online to the Census Bureau and pull up the individual profiles for each of those communities because they enumerate those. The geography is similar to our area plan boundaries, not 100% perfect because they use different criteria for geographies, like they follow roads, they'll follow, certain canyon lines. So it pretty well matches a lot of the area plans, but they do enumerate those geographies, which more or less match our area plans, whether there's an area plan. You can pull up the profiles and get into some data if you want to. But yeah, we did put in here, some very basics about Any other comments on the existing conditions? It is a point in time. Obviously, based on census data, some of this is based on the 5-year American Community Survey. Going into the Census Bureau site is, you have to take a deep breath to get in there. I just say that. You can easily spend hours and hours later you've gone somewhere else. You didn't even find out you initially wanted, so. But it's good. I mean, they do great work. It's remarkable for those guys. And help us to understand our needs. So then the next one was the communities of Coconino County. And if you look at today's comprehensive plan, there's several pages. So each community, Belmont Community Park Center, has a little blurb, if you will. But because this time we created these longer community session reports, we wanted to just link right to those because you can actually go in and then I can call one up and have a little census profile on it. We try to talk about, what services are available. It's not a full-on area plan, but it gives a little bit of background information. So there'll be a link to that here. And then again, we talk about which is a census designated place versus areas that are not census designated places. And we had a little tool that we were able to use where we could actually estimate some populations for those areas that didn't have that specific. And then for our indigenous nations, we also will have a link. We did a specific focus group on the focus circle for indigenous nations. We got notes on that, and then we'll have a link. This will be a link, not just to see that chapter.
Melissa, on the first page of this section that incorporated the cities and towns, so Flagstaff is identified as a gateway community, and then most of the others, many of the others, it says a potential gateway community. So if I remember the discussion about the house, these other places fit the description you have of gateway communities. So is there some formal certification or something that Flagstaff has and page is not?
So the regional plan calls itself the Flagstaff as a gateway. And the other communities here, we have it like Fredonia. There's not that I've seen an indication like they want to be called. So the Flagstaff regional plan has identified that Flagstaff is a gateway community. They call themselves that. But we can't just say to Fredonia, you're a gateway. They got somebody in that area to see what they would use to do it. They have like a map themselves. That makes sense.
Makes sense, but I don't think that was captured in wherever the text was about community character. I forget where that was, but it didn't say this is something that a community can step forward and claim. Said it's in a place where you're entering a distinctive zone, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'm sure that's not the words, but and so by that description, these places are gateway communities. Not with capital letters. So you could say, these are places that could take advantage of it or something. Or saying that, communities situated along. Okay, so that doesn't say, and that have a formal plan that claims their title.
True.
No
True.
reason that doesn't apply to page.
True.
Just saying. that's property in the state, potential neighboring communities, do they need to apply?
I don't think page is a great thing.
Do what?
Yeah, I mean, just the watching, this is something that's shocking.
And I,
In the last 10 years.
Well, it's also
Yeah.
right adjacent to,
Live that.
yeah, not a national park, but like national recreation.
Give it up for fish.
Area.
This seems a little off to me to say, but in some ways, I think Flagstaff should be listed as its own.
Very far.
It's in here. It might help planning a little bit more articulate.
Yeah, so for Tucson, you say this community has served as the gateway to Grand Canyon National Park.
Maybe-
Tucson is a potential.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's just an observation.
maybe we just,
Some stuff.
Yeah.
okay, then we don't need to repeat that. We'll look through this.
Okay, but when I said something that hit me is in the Flagstaff definition, you talk about economic activity. On the other, you don't talk about economic activity. That struck me as an omission by the communities. Not that we have to do anything, but that just stuck out for me.
What's your point? But I have more to say.
Sometimes we do not.
And we call that like exactly an economic hub, the other cities really aren't economic hubs.
Well, I mean, yeah,
From that.
That's
aspect.
just me talking about the fact that you guys want to be a rural county, but you don't talk about the rural economic growth. That's kind of what struck me. But I don't think you have to make a change, it just struck me.
well, that's a, well, I'll talk to John on the phone, see if he's got some ideas, but I don't think. So the last item then was the glossary, and it's already up there. I will say that I want to go through this again, and probably, we did eliminate a lot of terms, but I think there are more terms to be removed from this. And I say that because, well, everything is good. I mean, these are all good definitions, and most of these, well, everything that's underlined in a chapter, that term should be in the glossary for sure. But especially when a term is used more than once, then that definitely should be in the glossary. But if a term in the glossary is not used, because this is based partly on our current glossary with a lot of amendments, then I think it just adds. So I just want to say that this is something that I want to look at more thoroughly when. Does anybody have any specific comments or questions on the glossary?
I just was, just suggest two additional, terms would be, one would be land ethic, being that that's central to the comprehensive plan. And then the, second term, I do think would be appropriate to have this glossary with generation, which units if something or another, just to have that for future references.
You have, a definition that used to get for vulnerable crowds.
Well, I mean, we don't really use it anywhere in here yet, so it may just be that you need to keep it pretty much out of the dictionary for the most part. But
Well,
aims not have something in there.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, under Google, it says generally refers to the process of renewal. Regrowth or regeneration can be applied to various fields like agriculture, medicine, and even broader concepts like improving systems.
Well, for adding it to the sustainability appendix, then it would, as long as it's in there.
Okay, that's all. There you go. Land, that's it. You ready to talk on this? I'm your help. Anybody have additions you should say on this?
Yeah, I just have one question. So I started through the A's, I was expecting to see your references to attainable housing and affordable housing, blah, 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 and I saw them when I got to the H's. But I know they were underlying terms in that chapter.
Yeah.
And there, you say, see housing, attainable, or put them in both places, or whatever. I just know that, you know, those were terms where I was hoping they'd be in the glossary back when I read that chapter.
Yeah,
And then I was hoping they'd be in the glossary when I was on page 1 here, and
okay,
they weren't. So,
but they're there, we'll make that.
but yeah, I would never have thought to look under it.
Okay.
I'll just put it that
We
way.
do anticipate that the entire document will be hyperlinked, right?
Yeah.
And more, I mean, 10 years ago, it really was the norm. You took that document, the county spent a lot of money to print and color and to put a nice binder on it, and that's what you use. Our zoning ordinance now, for instance, is 100% hyperlinked interior.
Sure.
Because a definition in the zoning ordinance becomes very important. And you just click on it in the text. If you're in chapter 2 of the zoning ordinance, you click on the definition, it takes you right to the glossary to the definition.
Okay.
So I would anticipate, and that is one of the beauties, and quite frankly, it is cheaper in the end. It makes for a more usable and more efficient document to have the entire document hyperlinked where you're referencing different things. It's just easier for people to use. So I think, and we'll probably use some coding in there that people get used to. Usually the word is like, kind of has a different color or a boldness to it or something in the online document that you know by the coding of how you see that word different than just the black text elsewhere. You're like, oh, that's a defined word. Click on that and then you'll find the definition.
No, definitely, that's a good point, so. But I understand too that have that.
Pretty cool.
We're that's at the end of the list.
So we're gonna be meeting in a week and a half. Is that about right?
14.
And let's do we have people that we need to engage?
There's one person online who's not.
Calvin Shoemaker. Calvin, do you hear me? Do you have any participation that you'd like to be a part of right now?
No, I don't. I'm with the Williams Grand Canyon News. I was just listening in and seeing what this was all about. That's all.
Super. Well, thank you for spending the time with us this evening.
Yeah, of course. I enjoyed listening in.
Yeah. Rose or Miranda, do you have any follow-ups to anything?
Nope. Thank you, everybody.
For me, I just had a question in chat, and that was just to clarify scoring 1 to 5 each of the colored sections in order of priority. That's my assignment, right? Or is it just the ones for the high, medium, and low sections?
The high, medium, and low section within each 1 to 5, with 1 to 5 within the high, and then medium and low.
Okay. I think I heard you.
Sorry?
I said, I think I heard you.
So yeah,
But,
so when you're looking at each section, the high priority section, pick your top 5, and then for the medium, your top 5, and then the low, your top 5.
Okay. with one being the priority?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Alrighty, you guys. Any questions or thoughts for some of this? We get ready to go home. It's light still outside.
So now
Kind of funny.
I do have one request. I did want to do a retake on the photo and there's reasons for it, but, I'm hoping all of you can be here on the 14th. I know Laura, you cannot, is that right?
I can.
You can,
That's why.
that's what I was trying to do, okay. So hopefully, if you can all come on the 14th, we will get a complete group photo, which would be.
Did
you guys-
eyes closed or something? Or
So I'm very picky and Tiana popped laughing at me because she saw the setup and she knew then there were gonna be problems, but so we're gonna do a retake. We don't need to do it.
Alright, so bring our slides.
where did you take the picture?
So we took it actually outside, it was in this setting, but see, I don't want to talk.
Okay.
It was kind of nice, I mean, against this rock backdrop, but I mean, some people's eyes were closed, other people were, scratching their chin, and it's just like, it just doesn't work.
Photographers call it the blink factor.
The blink factor, yeah. So a lot of closed eyes,
Well, we found
a lot of goofy smiles, actually.
Maybe you should take 4 or 5 photos and then Photoshop them.
Well, yeah, then you have your $2,000 phone that picks out the face with the best smile for each of the faces.
Okay, Laura, that's your job.
I don't have that kind of.
I don't either, but,
Good.
yeah, but that would be good, if you guys can make it, and then, so I will say, I am going to, on Monday, maybe Tuesday, send you, I'm thinking, because otherwise the document would be too long, 3 documents, one for each section of the plan. The rural lifestyle, the stewards of natural environment, the diverse cultures, with the chapters in it. So there won't be like a whole linked table of contents at this point, but that way you'll see all the chapters together. There's still gonna need to be edits, like I said, updated maps, some information we're still waiting for. But all of your edits will be in there, and then that's. But it might be Tuesday, that's okay. And again, if anyone wants printed copies, you just need to let me know. Sign up.
Each of our posters.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you guys.
Certificates. Yes.
Okay, we're done. Thank you, everybody online. Appreciate it.
Alright, guys.
Thank
Best wishes to you.
If we had other edits for the
do group shots, I might take 30 photos.
Oh, wow,
It depends
Wow.
on how big it is,
That is a
but I'll use the fast shutter and it'll just take multiple shots.
You just hold it down.
Yeah.